20 years ago, I was a new professor at Creighton. Nathan and I didn't have any kids yet, and our first bestie was my colleague, Chad McBride. As many people did with Chad, we became fast friends, starting from when I was here for my job interview. And then we brought in our husbands and our kids and countless other friends who became mutuals. The world would be a much more joyful place if everyone had a friend and a colleague like Chad. He helped make my wonderful workplace what it is. I had planned to work together for another 15, 20 years and retire together. But ALS had other plans, and he died this past April, a little more than 4 years after his diagnosis. It sucks. Chad was so many things: a loyal friend and family member, an advocate for justice, and someone who showed up to build a fence or paint a room or attend a kids' theater performance. He was my youngest Clara's godparent, a prolific scholar and writer, a beloved teacher, a voracious reader, and a consumer of all kinds of entertainment, from trashy reality shows to The Color Purple. Chad was so many things to so many people during his 48 years. But besides his most important loves, of course, as dad to Jackson and husband to Alan, I think Chad's other great lifelong loves were music and Christmas. Even as ALS caused his body to rapidly decline, music and Christmas were two things he continued to enjoy and share with others. Music was involved in just about every corner of Chad's life. As a professor who taught courses about relationships, he often used songs in his teaching. I remember him using, for example, John Mayer's My Stupid Mouth to illustrate a concept in his interpersonal communication course, and Pink's Stupid Girls in his gender course. He had a go-to karaoke song, We Didn't Start the Fire, by Billy Joel. Truth be told, he wasn't a great singer, but that didn't stop him. For some reason, I'm self-conscious about karaoke, and I regret that I wasn't more willing to jump in and sing with him when we had the chance. He was a huge fan of live music, so it was really handy when he met his eventual husband, Alan. He worked at the CHI Center, so he got to see lots of extra concerts for free. Most all of Chad's friends have a concert experience of one kind or another. One of my first, and probably the most frequent, was the Indigo Girls. He saw them many times, including from the front row in his wheelchair during the last year of his life. He was so determined to see Pink and Brandi Carlile with a neck fan and some wet towels, he braved 100+ degree heat in the August of 23. Chad constantly was sharing music with people, saying, "Here, let me play this song for you. I want you to listen to this. I think you would really like these feminist lyrics." He also did this with books and TV shows, but Deborah didn't give me an hour, so I will stick to music. One of my most cherished memories of Chad was when we flew to a conference together, each of us with our iPods full of music and our wired earbuds. I was newly pregnant for the first time and nauseous the whole flight, and he was trying to distract me. So Chad reached into his backpack and pulled out a splitter. I guess you just carry that with you if you're Chad. On the whole flight from Omaha to Reno, we spent going back and forth, sharing songs with each other. I was trying to introduce him to some of the indie folk artists that I liked. And every time he liked a song that I shared, he would be exasperated and say, "How do I not know these people?" Like it was impossible for a music buff like him not to know all the music. He especially loved sharing groundbreaking country singers who were queer or people of color, or with feminist themes. He had so much hope that things could change in country music. And maybe if country music would make queer okay, that would give some hope for his family in Texas to think he was okay. Before streaming music was a thing, Chad burned mixed CDs for friends. And I didn't know him during the cassette years, but I bet he made a mean mixtape. All I know is that I had a 4-volume CD set that he burned for me in the early 2000s called Chad's Crap. That lived in my car for years, which for a long while was the only CD player I had. And when my oldest was born, he made a special CD that we listened to constantly. And even now, I cannot listen to the Chicks lullaby without crying and thinking about rocking that tiny little baby all grown up now. One of the songs on the CD, Little Babies Want to Suck on Their Toes, by Radney Foster, had magical powers over my newborn. We called it the emergency song. If the baby was inconsolable, we would turn that song on and he would shut up immediately. It was like it was an off button. It became a party trick. More recently, Chad had been developing a list called Chad's Damn Good Songs through posts on Facebook, which one of his friends has made into a Spotify list. It's a lot of 90s and 2000s country, which is not really my jam. But it also includes music from nearly every era and genre. Dolly Parton, James Taylor, Whitney Houston, R.E.M., the Broadway cast recording of Rent, Counting Crows, Taylor Swift, Casey Musgraves, and Lizzo, just to show you the range. He would share a link to the song on Facebook with an explanation of why it was a damn good song. Even when he lost the ability to speak, which is particularly cruel for a communication professor, he would still connect with us through a tablet that allowed him to type with his eyes, and he spoke through his tablet in a computer voice. So though it was slow, he could post and converse and text and still be a supportive and intelligent colleague and friend, and send book and music recommendations. My oldest, Grayson, is also a music buff, but from an era where music is much more portable and easier to discover than in Chad's youth. In the last few years, Grayson would sometimes share music with Chad that we thought he might like. Grayson's recommendation, Everyone I've Never Met by Laith Ross, was probably one of the last songs that Chad added to his damn good song list. It's a song that perfectly captures pandemic-era social anxiety, but it also reflected Chad's increasingly more homebound life as his disease progressed. About 2 months before Chad died, I sent him this text on behalf of Grayson. Grayson wants to know if you like folk punk and cow punk or queer country. Basically, punk, indie, queer country. He answered, I like Americana. Not sure if that's the same as indie, queer, punk country. Yes to queer country, although I'm not consuming a lot of new music these days, listening to what I already love. Not enough time. That stopped me short. Chad, not wanting to listen to new music, felt like he was giving up. And I was glad we were texting so I could take a moment to respond. Understandable, you should listen to what you love. Grayson was gonna make you a playlist if you liked any of that, but I'll tell him to back off. I relayed the message to Grayson, and we just both had a moment of sitting with this and feeling sad. And then I got this. In different circumstances, I would love to hear queer country. Actually, I still want to. Tell him to limit it to 10 to 20 songs. There's our Chad back. He was trying to have some boundaries and say no to things as a dying man's right. But the next thing you know, he's saying, all right, but only 20 songs. Besides music, Chad was a huge fan of Christmas. My family thinks I have a lot of Christmas decor, but he had more Rubbermaid totes just for his Santa collection than I have for everything total. Whenever people remarked on the size of his Santa collection, he would never fail to mention how he got most of them at like 80% off when a fancy gift shop went out of business, like a good Midwesterner does. As he became less able to do Christmas preparations for himself, friends and colleagues would go over and help. For several years, for example, my colleague Marty and I would put out his Santa collection. It was a 3-person job involving stepladders and rearranging and arranging. Chad would give us directions with his tablet, and we would keep working until we were all satisfied. Given Chad's love of Christmas, it was appropriate that he and Alan found out around Thanksgiving about a last-minute opportunity to adopt a baby who was due in just a few months. And they had to scramble and fit in all the home visits and the baby prep during the holidays. They were planning a big June wedding, but they had to get married quickly in order to adopt. And so in mid-December of 2016, they had a small gay shotgun wedding. And instead of a gift registry, they asked their guests to bring a signed Christmas ornament for their tree. Chad adored picking out gifts for people, and even last Christmas, he did all of his own online shopping. Incidentally, he gave me a Prince bobblehead, which I have coveted for years, and my husband never took the hint, but Chad did. And when all the boxes he had ordered arrived, caretakers just piled them up, and he told Alan not to look in them. Alan had taken on so much, caring for both their young son and for his husband, that Chad did not want him to be without surprises for Christmas. I actually love wrapping gifts, so this became something I could help him with. I would get there, and he didn't know where anything was, so he would say, "There's something from Kohl's with a sweater for Alan," and I would go searching through the piles of boxes in several different rooms until I found it. I would unbox something and show it to Chad to make sure it was the right thing, and then wrap it up. I was one of a group of 5 different colleagues who showed up weekly to help with Chad's care. But being there during the Christmas season was the best. I was stressed, and Chad was stressed with grading and making finals and Christmas preparations, but those afternoons together felt like a respite, kind of sacred even. And I feel myself this year really missing those afternoons with just the two of us during this year's finals and Christmas season. When I arrived in the weeks leading up to Christmas, Chad would almost always have his Amazon Christmas music playlist going, and we would catch up while I ran around retrieving gifts, wrapping them, and stashing them away. I was trying to remember if I ever heard Chad say that he had a favorite Christmas song, and my inclination is to say yes, all of them. But Alan says it was Silent Night, which sounds right. Chad's list of damn good songs admittedly did not have a lot of Christmas music, but it had a lot of songs that are perfect for Blue Christmas. Melancholy songs, songs of longing and love and loss. Even before he was sick, it was always a tiny bit sad for him around the holiday because of his grief over his family estrangement. But he poured all the love he had to give into Alan and Jackson and into the huge and loving family he made out of his friends. One often repeated quote from Chad's writing and teaching is this: "Relationships are a part of the human experience. If we're lucky, people are excited when we arrive and they hold our tiny hands. And if we're even more lucky, we have loved ones holding our hands when we die. Relationships are the through lines of our lives." And though he didn't say it quite this way, I think Chad would agree that music is another through line. It definitely was for him. The last email his care team received from Chad was just an hour or so before he passed. And he was saying how excited he was to have his first visit from a music therapist from hospice the next week. I feel connected to him through music, whether it's a song we both loved or just a song about friendship or grief that reminds me of him. Music has a way of moving us like nothing else. It binds us to people and places and memories, beautiful and also sad. This Christmas, in honor of Chad, I am going to let myself be blue when I need to. But I'm also going to sing some damn good songs. And I'm going to enjoy my decorations and my ornaments on my tree, and I'm going to hug my sweeties and my friends a little tighter. And I'll raise a glass to Chad, and maybe, just maybe, I will get the nerve to sing some karaoke.
Hi, my name is Cliff. I'm on the team at the Collective for Hope. We are Omaha's only nonprofit solely dedicated to providing free and inclusive grief support in the Omaha community. First, I want to thank you again for inviting me. This is a beautiful candle ceremony. Um, and Sherry, I want to thank you for sharing about your friend Chad. You've actually inspired me to tell something in a couple minutes, church related. So at the Collective for Hope, first of all, I feel like at this time I should explain why these are not Mardi Gras beads. So at the Collective for Hope, we call these our honor beads. If you ever come to the Collective for Hope for any type of grief support, this is one of the first things we direct you towards. Each color represents a type of loss. And we at the Collective for Hope also like to say the names of our lost loved ones because there is power in their names. And I also want to recognize that as I talk about grief, you know, big feelings are associated with grief. Some can be happy, some can be sad, and it can be counterintuitive. My names that these beads represent, you know, both my parents, friends in the Air Force that died by suicide, pets. So some of my names are Bart, Jackie, Mark, Lori, and Yoda. My dad's name was not Yoda. That was my childhood pet. Um, but yeah, one of the things that we provide at the Collective for Hope is an opportunity, like a safe space like this, where you can talk about both sides of grief. So this is where I'm inspired to tell a story about my dad because, you know, the joy that comes with a funny memory can also be complemented with the realizing that my dad is gone, right? Or memories can also be sad. I will always cry when I watch Field of Dreams without him. But I will also always laugh when I remember the one time he farted too loud in church. I hope I can say that here. Not that he farted, but that it was loud enough that people heard it this time. But at the Collective for Hope, we help over 2,000 people directly each and every year. And that is through our grief support programs. We know what the research says. If you don't seek support, and there are other ways to find support through friendships and churches, we're just the only nonprofit option out there, free and inclusive. And if you don't get some types of support in that first year, we know what the research says, right? More likely to use, reuse, or abuse substances, struggle in relationships, marriages, partnerships, at school or at work. And so, frankly, what we do is we provide peer-to-peer support, just like this. We have family groups for families that come in for 8 weeks in a row. We have monthly groups for different types of loss, LGBTQ plus grief sessions with partnerships with Omaha for Us. We partner with Heartland Family Services. We have our own groups for pregnancy and infant loss. We build weighted bears, which are the weight of a child either at birth or at death, that we have volunteers that build these bears for us, and we ship them out to all 50 states, Canada, and Australia. And I will say that everyone at the Collective for Hope are personally invested in this work. How can we not be? Because we all experience this, right? My son and I went through family group when we lost my mom or his grandma. And I will tell you, I knew my son was processing his grief because he came to the funeral with us, and I told this story about my mom and I loved Star Trek. And when you're a little kid and you get dropped off at school and you're embarrassed that your parents want to say I love you, right? And I was like, Mom, please don't say that. But it's okay to do this. So live long and prosper. We stayed up late every Saturday night watching Star Trek. And this was our symbol to say I love you in public without saying I love you. So I told that story at the funeral. And a couple weeks later, my son was like, hey, Daddy, can you teach me how to make this hand, teach me that. And so I did. But also, admittedly, I was not processing my grief. And my son and I didn't talk about his granny for a whole year. I was struggling at work. Corbin actually started struggling at school for the first time ever. So a year later, we went through the Collective for Hope's family group. My son wore green beads for Granny. At family group, we meet as a community, and then we break off into adults and kids rooms. So Corbin told me the first room he went into with other kids, he saw someone wearing green beads. He went up to them. They both knew it was the same type of loss. He made a friend. Community, right? And then that's what happened for the next 8 weeks. On the drive home, every night after family group, we would talk about Granny. The first drive home was a lot of crying, but after that, it was a lot of stories, a lot of questions that Corbin asked me about my mom that he never got a chance to ask her, or just, he was a year older. And my mom was a part of our life again. So that's what we do at the Collective for Hope. We provide those opportunities. Time and opportunity is a luxury, before and after loss. So to provide that safe space and those opportunities for you to share your lived experience, talk about your loved ones in community with each other, that's what we do. I have some brochures and some business cards with me, but if you have any questions, we're always looking for volunteers and support. Or honestly, a lot of people still remember us by our previous names, Teddy Bear Hollow, Grief's Journey, and Healing Embrace. And so I ask you, as I remember my names, for you to remember the name, the Collective for Hope. If there's anything that keeps us up at night, it's the thought that there are families and individuals in Omaha that don't even know that we exist when we could be helping them. And we know that there's more support that we could be providing in the community. So remember our name, and if you or someone you know could use some grief support, we're here for you. That's all I have.